So would you welcome to kick off the readings, Geraldine Mills.
That's it, actually.
No.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd just like to reiterate what James said and to congratulate Tony, Jarlath and Sandra and all of those who help as well in the background on a fantastic publication, 50th. It's absolutely gorgeous and I'm delighted to be in it. I'd also like to welcome my friend Susan Rich, who has come from Seattle to read tonight as well. The poem I'm going to read is called Transience, and it's in memory of Eva Saulitis, a poet and a marine biologist who worked on Prince William Sound with whales. And after reading her story, I wrote this poem. Transience. The woman moves away from where she was made to Prince William Sound. Something about it smells of home. She stays. Each spring she watches the bay for the orcas, named after the mountain that welcomes them, sees them along the shoreline, seal hunting. She gets to know them, voice by voice, tail by tail. She is in her element, theirs. Soon she learns that in this place of islets and exposed rock, of dripping forests, cloud layers, that there is more ways to wipe out a species than to harpoon them. Just let the tanker sidle in, let it bleed the blood of fossils into the sound and see how in 20 years not one orca pup born. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Geraldine, for that. Our next reader is another poet, Garrod O'Brien. And Garrod's poetry has been published in places like Abridged and Revival, Ropes, the Shot Glass Journal, the Stony Thursday book, and in the anthology I Live in Michael Hartnett. He won the Desmond O'Grady International Poetry Competition in 2013 and the Hannah Greeley Poetry Competition in 2016. And he's a founder member of Athlone Writers Group. So would you welcome, please, Garrod O'Brien.
Thanks very much, and it's a pleasure to be here, and especially to be able to congratulate the editors on the 50th publication, which is a real achievement. I have just retired after 44 years in the library service, and I came across a lot of cases of people that had reading difficulties, and this poem is called Dyslexia. That morning, hungover, he let us read. Take any book from the shelf, sit down, shut up. After big break and a cigarette, he was ready for spelling. Some tricky words thrown in among the 10 to test our mettle. Awkward, poultice, and reservoir. He calls out each word 3 times, paces between the desks, watches our progress, looks down at my copy and turns it towards him for a better look. Calls time like a practiced barman. Pens down, pass your copy to the boy beside you. He spells out each word slowly. A-W-K-W-A-R-D. P-O-U-L-T-I-C-E. R-E-S-E-R-V-O-I-R. With every word he spells, I feel the odds decreasing. I look towards the Kofra where the cane resides. Boys who got less than 6 correct line up beside a desk. I hear the squeak of the Kofra door, the practice swish of a fine bamboo. Watch the colour rising in his neck and wait for his decision. Today, for each word missed, the punishment is 2 of the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrod. Now for some fiction, we have our next reader, Joanne Hayden. And Joanne is a writer and an arts journalist. She was shortlisted for the Francis McManus Award in 2014 and again in 2015. Her short stories have been broadcast on RTE and published in the York Literary Review. She is a graduate of UEA's MA in Creative Writing, and her book reviews and interviews appear regularly in the Irish Independent. Would you welcome, please, Joanne Hayden.
Thank you very much. It's really lovely to be here, and it's an honour to have my work included in this very special edition of Crannóg, so thank you to the editors. I'm going to read a bit of my story. It's called Waning. The first time the moon told me what to do, I said no, but the moon just went on, chatterboxing at me through the skylight, hanging straight over my face. Do it now, Eve. Get up and go into his room. See if he's awake. He might be cold. You can keep him warm. He'll be fast asleep, I said, and he won't be cold. It's a roasting night. My precious girl, the moon said. There'll be consequences if you don't cooperate. Now get up and check on your twin. The landing was dark, but not dark enough. I could see into the main bathroom, so I walked sideways like a crab with my back to it, past the boxes ready for the move, past what used to be their room. Mum's breath made engine noises in her throat. She kept the pills that helped her sleep on the highest laundry shelf. I pushed open Davy's door. Mum had unscrewed his desk and leaned the broken shapes of it against the wall. I crept over to his bed. There was nothing on his locker except his glasses and the sketchbook he barely used anymore and the photo of our 10th birthday, the four of us, a year ago. In the dark, the photo was just a square of black, but I put it face down anyway. Don't, said the moon. I just did, I said. Davy's duvet covered all of him, except his head. He moved on the pillow. He looked different asleep. People go on about us having the same eyes. I picked up his glasses, pulled out the skinny arms and bent them back the wrong way. Stopped before they snapped. Get into his bed, the moon said. You're dilly-dallying. Okay, I said. I lifted the duvet, got in and put one foot between his legs. I thought he'd be wearing pyjama bottoms, but he wasn't, and my foot touched his slug. His eyes popped open immediately. He looked at me as if he was trying to remember who I was. I moved my foot gently. He took a gulp of air, but when I tried it again, he pushed me out of the bed. Stop it, he shouted. Get away. Back in my own room, I told the moon I wasn't listening to it anymore. I'd hate to be you, moon, I said. I really would. You're a boring, useless place. Nothing lives on you, not even weather. I control the tides, said the moon. You don't even shine, I said. You're just a mirror. All your light comes from the sun. Silence, said the moon, and dropped a blanket on me. And in my dream, a hare with a human face kissed me, even though I said no. It wasn't my fault. I hadn't drunk water too late, but I must have weed in my sleep because the next morning Mum was patting me awake, pulling me up, ripping the sheets from the mattress, saying, You're fine, it's all fine. Just have a quick shower. Don't tell Davy, I said. But Davy was already at the door, staring at me through his glasses. I thought she'd stop doing that, he said. Wait downstairs, Mum said to him, and when he disappeared, she hugged me close. I'll turn the shower on, she said. Don't stay in it too long, or you'll both be late for school. The shower in your ensuite, I said, not the one in the main bathroom. I know. Her voice came out high and wonky. Her breath was cigarettes and mints. Just 2 weeks, sweetheart, and we'll be done with this house. She turned away from me and covered her face with her hands. I had to remind her to get me a towel. The second time the moon told me what to do, I said, No way I'm going in there. Come on, said the moon. It's not the boogeyman's den, just a silly room with a toilet and a bath and a sink and a shower and an empty chair. Leave your slippers off. You've such beautiful feet. I went onto the landing, ghosty quiet. Not even Mum's engine snores. I stretched out my arm until my fingers were touching the handle of the bathroom door. My legs were wobbly, like after an injection. Open it, the moon said. Turn on the light. That's my girl. See how easy it is? In the mirror, my face stared back at me like it belonged to someone else. I'm not staying, I said. Relax, the moon said. Sit in the chair and we'll have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Our next reader is a poet. She is Susan Miller DeMars. And Susan has published 4 collections of poetry with salmon poetry, the most recent of which is called Bonefire, that appeared in 2016. Bonfire, or as we say in Clare, Bonfire, was nominated for the Forward Prize and has been featured on RTE Radio 1's Arena and on the poetry programme. Although she was born in Philadelphia, she lives in Galway, where with her husband Kevin Higgins she teaches creative writing, and they coordinate the acclaimed Over the Edge reading series since 2003. Her next collection is called Naked, New and Selected, and that's due out from Salmon in 2019. So would you welcome please Susan Miller DeMars.
Hi. I just wanted to say I was hosting it Over the Edge last night, and I wanted to announce this event. And all I got out was, of course, the big news is Crannóg, and there was this big round of applause. That's as far as I got. That is the respect and the affection with which Crannóg is held, and it was a lovely thing to see. So on behalf of Kevin and myself, happy anniversary, you guys. Michael and I were just saying the choice is between a long explanation and no explanation for a poem, go with no explanation. So there's no explanation for this poem. Tempting. The snakes are back in the trees. The white weave of smoke round her head in the diner when she despairs. I feel the straw's sharp kiss on my lip. The snakes are back. Surprised, I am not petrified, my mouth not filled with gravel. Instead, softness is my sentence, and her tears are apples.
Our next reader is Bernie Dwan. Bernie won second prize in the Jonathan Swift Creative Writing Awards in 2017. In 2016, as part of the Seen and Heard Festival, she performed her one-woman show Unrhymed Dublin in Smock Alley Theatre. She produces and presents the A to a Z of historical blunders on Near FM radio. And her first collection was published by Lapwing. It's called Frankly Baby. So to read a poem, would you welcome please Bernie Dwan.
Thanks. Thanks very much to Crannóg for publishing my little poem. It's called Private Drinker. Self-assured, an independent-looking type, respectable, a little quirky even, the very model of a suburban lady. We occasionally exchanged friendly nods in the bank, a few spoken pleasantries in the library, looks of impatience in the post office queue. This afternoon, on the back lane, from the supermarket to the car park, she unscrews the cap on the newly purchased elixir, swigs it back, poorly concealed in a brown paper bag. The tectonic shift of her side eye collides with my embarrassed stare, shuts it down like a power outage. I return chastely to the car and wonder at the smugness of sobriety. Thanks.
And our next reader is Steve Wade. And Steve's short fiction has been widely published and anthologised. His stories have been published in over 50 print publications, including Crannóg previously, Zen-Free Publications, New Fables, and Aesthetica Creative Works Annual. He was a prize nominee for the Penn O. Henry Award and also a prize nominee for the Pushcart Prize. So to read from his story, would you welcome please Steve Wade.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks as always for publishing my work. The Stranger. Just being alive felt like an act of betrayal. The accident happened that very day 17 years ago. Not a day went by, nor a waking hour during every day of every week in all those months when the images of Con didn't come to Liam Oak, Con's father. Con as a small boy in a cowboy outfit on his rocking horse. Con in a light grey communion suit posing for photos in the church garden. Or Con in his early teens with his boisterous young pals during haymaking. But every image, every sound and scent memory led, as always, to the inevitable grotesque collage. Con's 19-year-old body lying lifeless next to the green harvester, with Limog behind the wheel. Or his son's handsome face, pallid, laid out in the parlour before the funeral. No bruises or cuts visible, his expression serene. Were it not for the small herd of exotic cows, the fancy fowl and the miniature ponies, Limog would have long ago succumbed to a solution that never left him alone. And now it is 5 years since Limog's wife had turned in on a Saturday night and never woke to see Sunday morning. Soon he, like his wife, would go to sleep and never wake up, if he was lucky. In the meantime, he knew that he had to finally find someone who could devote himself to the running of the farm and the care of the livestock with the same devotion and passion as he and Con. To this end, he turned to his younger brother. Although there had been no communication between them since their mother's passing over 20 years ago, he tracked down his younger brother in the USA. At 71, his brother said he was too old to return home and way too old to run a farm. Besides that, his family was American. He had one son and 2 girls, grandchildren and a great-grandchild on the way. Too many commitments. All further communication attempts from the US, Limog ignored. That is, until a handwritten letter from his brother's son Jacob arrived. A lad in his 30s, about the same age Con would have been had he lived. Limog learned that he was a graduate of Boston College with a degree from the Centre of Irish Programs. Jacob had, on leaving college, taken up a temporary post in his father's company. A temporary post that was to last 15 years. The work he described as drudgery. More interested in history, nature, the land and conservation. The prospect of running a farm, especially in Ireland, had him so excited, he wrote, he couldn't sleep. Not a man to avoid speaking his mind, Limog asked his nephew for reassurance. What was to stop Jacob from putting the farm on the market as soon as they lowered Limog's body into the grave? He clearly understood and appreciated his uncle's position, he told him. Were things the other way round, he too would be suspicious. Papers were quickly drawn up conferring the right of ownership of the small holding from the uncle to the nephew, with conditions. For as long as the younger man chose to remain on the property, caring for the livestock and tending to the land, the place belonged to him. Should he ever decide to leave, however, he would forfeit ownership, while being legally obliged to find a replacement caretaker. The arrangements were made. It was late spring. Jacob was due to arrive in early May. It was now just past mid-April. The prospect of the young man's arrival reawakened in Limog sensibilities he hadn't experienced for years. The crowing of the red cockerel at dawn sounded in his ears as the wildest and most inspiring thing he had ever heard. And the white pear blossom through the kitchen window he saw as though for the first time. On the Saturday of the last week in April, Limog awoke late. With no need to check his watch, the position of the sun through the bedroom window told him it was round midday. Not once in over 50 years working the farm had he overslept. He got up and into the day, but before he even stepped out to the cottage door, he sensed that something was wrong. No barking or whining came from the kennels. A thrumming started up in his ears as he worked his way to the fancy fowl enclosures. The birds were already outside in the wood and mesh wire flights. Perhaps he'd forgotten to lock them away the night before, but he really didn't think so. For a man in his mid-70s, Limog took off at a fair pace up the gradual slope to the ridge that overlooked the lower fields. At the top, he bent over, pressed a hand against his forehead. His other hand he rested on the wooden stile. From the fields below came the familiar yips and yaps of the 3 dogs. He squinted in their direction. They were gambling about among the flock of merino sheep. With them it looked like the figure of a man. Limog clambered over the stile and made his way down the descent. Not until he was at the bottom of the track did his dogs come running towards him. "I see him," he said to the dogs. "Lie down now. Go on, off with you." The 3 dogs turned about and bolted back to the figure in the field. "Hello there," Limog said as he approached a man crouched over one of the sheep. Stray dogs, the man said. 6 to 7 of them, but they were no match for these lads. He ruffled the coat of one of the collies. He then glanced back at the sheep lying on its side. She'll be okay. He turned back to Limog, smiled and held out his hand. The man's hand remained in the air between them, longer than it should have. He dropped his hand and took Limog's from his side and pressed hard. I'll leave there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that. Our next reader is a poet, Elizabeth Power. Elizabeth completed an MA in writing in NUIG in 2007. She has won or been placed in the Swift Satire International Writing, the Dromineer Literary Festival, the Maria Edgeworth Competition, the June Fest Short Story Competition, and the John Ardham Spoken Word Competition. Her writing has appeared also in The Moth in Crannóg previously, in Skylark 47, Force 10, and Norboy Norwest. So would you welcome, please, Elizabeth Power.
Thanks very much, and congratulations to Crannóg. I'm very proud to have my short poem in this beautiful edition. A poem that needs no explanation. Being Gaia. His story cleared the practice of sacred from the earth. I see her red dance of heat. Inside she burns at the betrayal. To lose and know that loss so profoundly, weak from the force of an enemy more skilled in plunder. She looks dismayed at her body, her skin torn, her seas, her waters running in currents of sewage. Man, she wheezes through a phosphorescent fog. Your shit will kill me.
Our next reader is Michael Farry. Michael is a retired teacher, he's a poet and a historian. He has had 2 poetry collections published. The first one was Asking for Directions, that was published by Doghouse Books in Tralee in 2012, and The Age of Glass by Revival Press, Limerick in 2017. He's also published a history book called Sligo, The Irish Revolution, 1912 to 1923. That was published in 2012 by Four Courts Press. Would you welcome, please, Michael Farry.
Thank you, Tony. The first poem I ever had published was published in Crannóg, and I've had a number published since, so thank you very much for that, and I'm honoured to be included in Crannóg 50. Somewhere. When you are old and driving west, it's easy to forget where exactly you are and where you're bound. But there are places that pull you back, like that spot between Carrick and Boyle, where you swing around a gentle corner, and on the right, rising to the north, a patchwork of hedged fields, a scattering of livestock fade to far mountains, vague in the autumn background. I remember this spot, how we laughed at the Turlough, a pole waist deep in its water. This scrap of signal land flooded each Christmas as we drove home and back. It's dry now. There's a new farmhouse behind the trees with a sign for free-range eggs. On the left, the ground rises to a small stone church, Protestant by the belfry, with that look of having been there forever, earthbound. It's heartening to have such a landmark on a last odyssey.
A number of people have said actually recently that their first publication was in Crannóg. And it's great to see people, at issue 50, having collections published and so on, and doing so well. Our next reader is Mike O'Halloran. Mike is a writer and a psychotherapist. He has completed 1 novel and is currently writing a second. He has been published in the Sunday Tribune, and he is a member of Galway Writers' Workshop. So to read from that novel, would you welcome Mike O'Halloran.
Thanks. I hope you don't mind, but I couldn't resist editing it a bit further after I said. At least the man was only to be wounded in the leg, a warning. The lights at Sutton Cross were red. As we waited in silence for them to change, we heard a siren screaming and saw a yellow flash further down the seafront. Martin swore and I tensed, but the squad car only slowed briefly as it approached before accelerating away in the direction of Holt. I breathed again. The lights finally changed and we headed for the city. The line of comfortable houses to our right, to our left, the wild rough bay. The car, a battered old Renault 4, swayed from the force of the gale blowing in from the sea. But the growing storm meant no cops on the road checking for tax and insurance, and no kids playing football on the street when we arrived at our destination. Once or twice I glanced left towards the south side of the city and saw a few pale lights peering through the darkness. Towards the end of the bay, all was pitch black, and I took what comfort I could in the fact that Killiney Hill, where we were going, was shrouded in rain-soaked darkness. For weeks I had dreaded this day and had craved the whole thing would be called off. Now, even as I drove myself and Martin towards the target, I began hoping the car would break down, its engine spluttering to a halt somewhere along the seafront, and I could take control again of my life, which I knew, and at the same time did not want to know, I had signed over to Mona. The Renault kept going, however, and soon we were belting through the grimy North Strand, passing the corporation flats whose walls still retained a few faded slogans supporting the hunger strikers of '81. It was on the edge of the drug-infested Summer Hill area. We had to stop. Several cars idled between us and the traffic lights. Shit, Martin swore. It was then I saw a funeral procession of locals snaking down the hill on our right and coming towards us. 50 or so men and women in shabby coats and worn-out shoes walked behind the hearse. Even in the rain and poor light, I could see their faces drawn and pale. The hearse made its way onto the yellow box as the lights turned green. The cars in front of us held back in deference to the dead. I fumed. The cortege was going the same direction as us. I flung the car into gear, wanting to bypass the traffic in front and the cortege, although this was risky. "Stop," yelled Martin, "they'll be turning into Sheriff Street." And so for 2 minutes we crawled behind the mourners, my arms tense from gripping the wheel, my shoulders so tight they hurt. At last we were moving quickly again, over the river, the straight run to Irish Town, and then the leafy suburbs of the south side. At Blackrock we took the Dean's Grange Road rather than go by Dunleary, where a boat from England was due and its disembarking passengers would be scrutinised by the special branch. I began to fantasise the man would not be there when we arrived, and then that I was somewhere else, anywhere else than there. I was cold and sweating, and each time I wiped the sweat from my brow, some made its way into my eyes, causing them to sting. Martin and I had barely spoken since we passed the funeral. He was less anxious than me, though he kept checking the gun was ready, putting it back on the floor, then reaching down for it and checking again. When we began the ascent up Killiney Hill, I finally accepted that this was real, that the trial runs over the previous weeks had not been for fun, and that a man was about to be shot. I began to silently beg God the gun would jam or the man would not be where he was expected. Even better, we would be intercepted by the police and arrested. I would go to jail for a few years, my honour intact, and Pat Farrell would stop collaborating. The house is his parents' and he visits them every time this week. So unless something unusual has happened, your man will be there. Martin was telling me something we had discussed a score of times. He directed me to take a right turn and we came into an estate of bungalows which lined the hill in rows. We took another right, then a sharp left, and Martin said, "Slow down, here, yeah, just here, turn the car around, quick, for Christ's sake." He slipped the balaclava over his head, got out, and walked briskly in the pelting rain up the short driveway. I gritted my teeth, my foot suspended over the accelerator. A light shone behind the curtains in a front room. An old Merc and a newer Toyota were parked in the driveway. The garden was full of shrubs and had a huge eucalyptus tree. Then the hallway was in brightness as the door opened. A millisecond pause, some kind of scuffling, the night-piercing crack of the gun, and Martin tearing back to the car and flinging himself in, shouting, "Get the fuck out of here." "Fuck," he shouted again. "What?" He tried to grab the gun and it went off. I think I shot him in the chest.
Our next reader is Susan Rich. Susan has come all the way from Seattle to be with us tonight. So I just want to give her a special mention. She is the author of 4 poetry collections, including Cloud Pharmacy and The Alchemist's Kitchen, both by White Pine Press. She also co-edited the travel anthology Strangest of Theatres, Poets Crossing Borders, that was published by the Poetry Foundation. She has received awards from the Fulbright Foundation and the Times Literary Supplement. Her work appears this year in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, in Field, the New England Review, Pleiades, and the Southern Review. And earlier she presented myself and Ger with a copy each of her new collection, Cloud Pharmacy. And I told her, having grown up in a pharmacy, I was looking forward very much to reading those, and having written a couple of poems about pharmacists myself. So would you please welcome, all the way from Seattle, Susan Rich.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you to the Crane. Thank you to Tony and Jer, who I wrote and said, "Oh, I wish Seattle was closer. I can't really come." And then 5 minutes later, thought you only live once. And thank you especially to Geraldine Mills and Peter Moore, who are my friends in poetry for the last 15 years, and I couldn't be here without them. The poem, and thank you all for being here and for listening, and especially because I know my voice is going to sound a little odd. I thought I would just say that this poem kind of plays with time, in the time of foxes and the time of technology. So if you get that, that's really all you need to worry about. There's one term of Java and Swifts, and some of you may know that Java and Swift are computer languages, but they're also, I'm from Seattle, coffee and birds. Every clock is made of foxes. The fox prefers paint colors stirred for semi-gloss. Its passport river silvered, trimmed with ultraviolet. At midnight, the harvest moon bothers my sleep, and I wake ready for my early class in Java and Swift. The exact second when this barking fox under my bunk shows her cubs, dimpled and smelling of cherries with sour cream. Unanswered, the telephone wing circles around us, sending messages of apology to the jasmine vine, which does not answer. The mother fox warns of a cyber attack, calling me in a secret name known only to the Idaho potatoes, which look out of so many eyes they become academics. The clock drops minutes and cries after them. The calendar tears a page from the ocean reward for lost time. I searched the sands of the hourglass for a Tuesday gone late August, tracked down 2 presidential terms. The flip phone blinks again, and the foxes murmur their timeless faces to the moon. I must change my life.
There is Eva McCann, and Eva writes fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. Her short stories have been published in various literary journals, including Crannóg previously, and they've been translated into Italian. Her work has also been anthologized by New Binary Press and by Ireland House. She has been shortlisted for the WOW and the Sunday Business Post Penguin Ireland short story competitions. She is currently working on her first collection of short fiction. And Marina, her first novel, was published by Words in the Street in 2018. And I could add that just today Books Ireland came out, and she is mentioned there by Sue Leonard among 4 of the talents to watch out for, I think, and got a great review of Marina. So would you welcome, please, Eva McCann.
Hi, and I'd like to say congratulations to Crannóg on this momentous occasion. And they actually published my first short story. So really? Yeah, they did. So here I am again in Crannóg. I think it's my 5th time now. Okay, so I'm reading from Stealing Boyfriends, and in the story, I'm just starting just a bit from the start. The Stephanie is at her mandated counselling session. Stephanie, how have you been? Good, thanks, Susan. I nodded compliantly and tried to look sad. We did some powerful work in the last session. Yes, I've been thinking a lot about my father this week. I sighed, shaking my head. Well, that's understandable. I'd like us to do an exercise today, if that's okay with you. Whatever you think, Susan, you're the expert. She smiled, got up from her chair, walked to the corner of the room, lifted a wooden stool and placed it between us to make a triangle. Sitting back down, she held her hand out towards the stool like a lackluster magician's assistant. I want you to imagine that your father is sitting on this stool, Stephanie. I want you to talk to him, to tell him what's happened and why you're here. I took a deep breath. Well, Daddy, you're not looking so great, I said. Susan didn't bat an eye when I looked at her. Just looked back at me in the direction of the empty stool. Well, Daddy, I suppose you've been watching me since you died. That'd be typical you. But you can hardly judge, can you? Yep, affair with my boss. I'm just like you, am I not, Daddy? I was really getting into this stage. I started out stealing Twixes and now I've graduated to men. But now work have sent me here, Daddy. Everyone hates me in the office. They're glaring at me, Daddy. They've hidden my favourite cup. Then I started screeching and put my head between my hands. I sobbed for as long as I could get away with. I had discovered this was the best way to while away these mandated sessions. Eventually, as she always did, Susan leaned across with the tissue. Well done, Stephanie, she whispered. Now, with your permission, I'd like to examine what you said to your father. Okay, I sniffed. You mentioned stealing, Stephanie. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Oh, I used to steal things when I was a kid, buttons from school, money from my mother's purse, those sorts of things, the usual kid stuff. And why did you stop? Did your father catch you? Well, he hit me with his belt, but that didn't stop me. I got caught by a security guard in boots. And were you prosecuted? Nah, they let me off with it because of my father's death. I was very lucky. Okay, so I'd like to bring you back to the act of stealing. So you simply stopped after getting caught. I just couldn't do it after that, to be honest. I lost the nerve and my mother was so upset. Your mother? Yes, we'll come back to her. But you said you feel you stole this man, Jeff, your current boss. Well, I suppose I was always attracted to attached men. And are there any attached men in your life at the moment? I thought of Jonesy. No, I said. I think I've learned my lesson, getting caught in the office and all that. Well, that's positive, I suppose. Now, we're drawing close to the end of our session, so I'd like you to think about your addiction to drama more in the coming week, so we can return to it next time. Addiction to drama. She tilted her head. I suggest that the affair was a substitute for your inability to face up to the circumstances of your father's death. A compulsion to repeat the drama so you could control it as such. Your father being found dead in bed with your teacher. That was a very traumatic experience for a young woman just reaching puberty. Oh, I said, I see what you mean. I was nodding vigorously, as if this was all so insightful and I had never read a fucking pop psychology book or a Marie Claire article in my life. So, will you mind yourself this week, Stephanie? Mind myself. Well, we discussed ways of relaxing. Have you tried any of my suggestions? Well, no, I thought about what you said, but I'm more of a magazine person than a hot bath person. Oh, yes, I saw you reading a gossip magazine in the waiting room. That's an unusual choice for a woman like you, a woman like me. Well, from what you've told me in the last 3 sessions, you're a very intelligent woman, Stephanie. You did very well at college. You walked straight into a job after your A-levels. You were headhunted for the position you're in now. I'd just like to switch off. Well, I wouldn't exactly call these gossip magazines switching off, Stephanie. Given your life history, it's more like switching on. Oh, I see what you mean. Perhaps a psychologies magazine or an Oprah would be more conducive to relaxing, and you could even try to read one in a hot bath. Oh, I said, yeah, well, thank you, Susan. I will think about it in the next week. I walked out smiling, straight past the next client who was engrossed in her phone. Outside, I dumped the magazine in the nearest bin and opened a few buttons on my blouse.
Our next reader is Patrick Chapman. Patrick is the author of 8 poetry collections and 4 books of fiction. His latest publications are Open Season on the Moon, published by Salmon Poetry, and Anhedonia. These are stories published by BlazeVox in 2018, and a novel, So Long, Napoleon Solo, published in 2017, also by BlazeVox. So would you welcome, please, Patrick Chapman.
Tony and the editors of Crannóg, and congratulations on your 50th. It's an auspicious year for 50th celebrations, the moon landing, Abbey Road and this. And I'm really honoured to be in this magazine. This poem is called Pilot, and the title is spelled P-I-L-O-T. How did you persuade her to go with you? Was she expensive? Was she good? You went for a stroll on the sea. Why not use a boat? You admit you raised a corpse. You know there's a law. You know it skews the market if you bring in the undead. What was the deal with the fish and the loaves? How, with slender means, did you produce those commodities in such volume? Was that not a violation of quotas? You made gallons of wine out of water. The military-industrial viticulture complex must have loved you for that. What do you mean you're a peacenik? Why destroy civic property if you're so bent on being meek? Is your philosophy designed to pacify the powerless? I see. Now, this band of yours, were they your abductors? Your boyfriends? Why did they forsake you? Why are your people so blind and so poor? Tell me how you fooled them into wanting only you. Why let our man kiss you? Did you like it? You claim it was you who sent him? That it wasn't his fault? Are you saying he's one of your lot? Should we get our money back? I mean it. Should we? No, because you are going to die. That's inevitable now. You are waiting to die. You seem to want to die. Hold on. The kingdom of where? Don't give me that. You're walking that Via Dolorosa, my friend. It's no use looking at me. I don't care who you are. I'd just soon let you go if only... What? Fine. I wash my hands. You are taking a plane to that tower and you're not coming back. That's all there is to it, my son.
Thank you, Patrick. Our next reader is Hannah Summers. Hannah has an undergraduate degree in sculpture and a master's in creative writing, and she likes to find ways to combine the two disciplines. She has been published in From Glasgow to Saturn. She has performed with the University Camarade and is currently taking part in the Glasgow Clydebelt Poetry Mentorship. Would you welcome, please, Hannah Summers.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be published in this special 50th edition of Crannóg, and also to be given the excuse to come here to Galway, to the Crane Bar. The poem I'm going to read for you is called Objectophilia, which means in its most romantic sense the tenderness and love that one can feel for an inanimate object. And it's a feeling that struck me once whilst I was waiting for my bus home in the rain. Okay. Objectophilia. I leant against you unwittingly. We were across from the bus stop. I felt bruised, like the back of my head, that time it smacked off a concrete step. You were feeling stony, presumably. Concrete was not of your essence. I tipped my head and inhaled you, accidentally at first, but sinking through your mossy aroma was like falling into a well shaft. It was like taking a long, drenching drink of fresh forest floor. I swiftly returned for more, scooping big, deep nosefuls until the number 4 bus came and divided us. If I roamed the bus stops of the land, I doubt I'd find another so tender, yet so stoical. I dedicate this crossed-out poem to you. Something here is that loves a wall.
And John's fiction has been published in the Hennessy Book of Irish Fiction, in the Sunday Tribune, the Sunday Independent, the Sting Fly, and online in Books Ireland and the Irish Times. And he has been broadcast on RTE's The Book on One. His awards include the Hennessy Award for Emerging Fiction and the Court International Festival of Literature New Writing Prize for Fiction. He's also published 4 poetry collections, the latest of which is Sunlight, New and Selected Poems, published by Daedalus. And his prizes for poetry include the National Poetry Prize, the Hennessy Award for Poetry, and the Ireland Funds Prize. He is a senior counsel, and his first collection of short stories is forthcoming. Would you welcome, please, John O'Donnell.
Thanks, Tony. Can I send my thanks to, like everybody else, to Ger and Jareth and Tony. We all know as writers, everyone in this room as a writer knows that we heave these kind of letters we send out into the world, and it's so brilliant to get a postcard back from someone like Crannóg. Crannóg, I understand, is a kind of a lake dwelling, and I think in Crannóg I certainly feel at home, and I'm very grateful to you for making us, all of us, feel at home, so thanks very much. This is a poem, and again, like Michael, it's a piece of fiction, and again, like Michael, I've edited a bit, and as I edited, I suspect, like Michael, and like some of us who said, "Oh my God, the first bit was awful. The bit they published is awful." I'm again afflicted by more and more crippling self-doubt. But here we go. This is the extract from Rainbow Baby. This last time, the third time, you see, I'd been certain. As soon as I saw those 2 blue lines, this is it, I thought, this is the one. You'd want to put its name down for St. Damian's, my friend said, giggling. What I want is for this to go full term. To be one of those mothers parading their bumps up and down the supermarket aisles. To walk past a playground and not feel an empty swing inside me, creaking back and forth. To pause sometimes and catch my breath. And then breathe in again the wondrous strangeness of it, happening to me and Joey, the 2 of us, the 3 of us. I wanted the shape of it growing within me, and I wanted the bone-deep tiredness of it sinking me until I'd wake to find the ultrasound technician twinkling at me as she manoeuvred the transducer and pointed at the screen saying, "There it is, look!" But the technician shook her head. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm really, really sorry." "This is a profoundly distressing matter," the judge says slowly. "Distressing for all concerned," he says, looking behind me at where Joey's sitting. My barrister glances back at me, a hopeful eyebrow raised. The judge scowls. "I cannot, however, allow this serious offence to go unpunished," he says, and this time my barrister makes a face. "Having regard, therefore, to the early guilty plea and the psychiatric report of Dr. Doran, the previous good record of the accused, the appropriate sentence is one of 18 months. A sob behind me. It's Joey, his face bowed in his hands. The only other sound is the scratching of the reporter's pens. The judge pauses and continues, "Which in the circumstances I will suspend on a number of strict conditions." And as he's listing off stipulations about treatment programs, I look across to where the girl is, sandwiched between a police officer and a social worker. Scrawny, pale. She could be one of the first years in St. Damian's, though the prosecution said she'd been 16 when it happened. And she doesn't seem triumphant or disappointed, she just seems stunned. And as I look at her, because this is the first time I've seen her since the shopping centre, I wonder, who's minding the baby? Who's looking after him today? It was a boy, definitely. Wayne. Not the name I'd have chosen, but still. She'd been standing just inside the entrance of one of the department stores with her friend and a couple of young lads skitting about something on a mobile phone. What was she thinking of, leaving the pram out there in the mall? I walked over and leaned in under the hood. He was asleep. "You're so perfect," I thought, as I lifted him out of the pram. Very gently, I didn't want to wake him. He was wearing a multicoloured sleep suit. "Like a little rainbow you are," I murmured, nuzzling his head. Then I tucked him under my coat and started walking down the concourse. I could hear her shouting when she came out of the department store. "Wayne," she said, "where's Wayne?" But I kept walking, even though the security guard outside Tesco's had turned to look at me and the bundle I had swaddled in the crook of my arm. And as I passed through the revolving doors and out into the car park, I felt him stir slightly and start to wriggle. And the girl was wailing now. "My baby! Where's my baby?" I glanced inside my coat, and as I did, he opened his eyes. And then, maybe because he recognized his mother's voice, he started to cry. "Shush, shush now," I said, rocking him to try and get him back to sleep. Then I put my little finger to his lips, the way I'd seen other mothers do, and he stopped. "That's it," I said, soothing him as he tried furiously to suckle. The security guard had come out through the revolving doors and was standing in the car park looking round, but I kept going, past the exit barrier and out onto the street. I was thinking of the two of us, you see, the three of us, and all the things that we were going to do. Thank you.
Lovely story. Very well read. John mentioned the lake dwelling there, and the reason why Crannóg is called Crannóg is that it began life in the Bridge Mills building at the top of Dominic Street. And as you know, the river is on one side and there's a canal or two on the other side. And one day somebody looked out the window and said, "We're surrounded by water. It's like being in a Crannóg." And we said, "That's what we'll call the magazine." So that's the story behind the title. Okay, so our next reader is Martina Dalton, and Martina studied fine art at Waterford Institute of Technology. She has recently been published in Poetry Ireland Review and in the Stony Thursday book. She lives in Tramore, County Waterford. So would you welcome Martina Dalton?
Thank you so much. It feels like an honour to be here, and happy 50th. And it's a lovely space, I have to say. There's a lovely energy here. My poem is called Valencia. I thought that I could always get to see your purple peat. Young men bent over, helping their fathers take it in. That there were years ahead of this for me. But this time feels like it could be my last. The shadow on the mountain coming in. Beyond the road's hard edge, a herd of coloured cows buckle underneath the weight of such a low-slung sky. Yellow iris, cotton straw, all stooped from eking out. Where sky has washed its hands of drama, mist lights little fires in lines along the bog. Colour seeps, settles dense on the horizon, and earth seems to move to meet it. This place without a roof to offer shelter or hold her in. I do not leave it lightly. That which forced the tree's return will finally take me to the void when it's all gone.
The next reader is back to fiction, Martin Keaveney. It says here that Martin's debut collection of stories, The Rainy Day, is due to be published by Penniless Press. But in fact, it is now actually published. In fact, I saw it on a website just today. Has a lovely photograph on the cover of a typical Irish rainy day that we're so used to. He's been published in Ireland, the UK, and in the US. His screen and stage credits include RTE and Scripps Ireland Playwriting Festival. He has a BA in English and Italian, an MA in English in writing, and he has recently submitted a PhD at NUIG in creative writing and textual studies. He was awarded the Sporánach Dhéathair for his research in 2016. He works as a creative writing lecturer and consultant. Would you welcome, please, Martin Keaveney.
Thanks very much, Tony. Good evening to you all, and congrats to Crannóg on this wonderful occasion of their 50th issue. I was going to read the last part of The Hunter on page 58 there on the top. The chalet had a couple of doors at the end of one large room with a tiny kitchenette in the corner. There was a window over the sink and a large notice board on a short wall next to what I guessed was a toilet. Door keys hung on the board. The hooks were numbered up to 37. Ramsay put the sealing gun on the windowsill, went to the sink and filled a pot of water. "Take a seat," he said, and lit the gas plate on the cooker. "I'll just have a leak." Ramsay pointed at the toilet door. The cubicle was tiny. There was a plastic raised seat extension placed on the bowl. "Be careful," I heard him, "but please, you mustn't move the seat. It is perfectly aligned." "Damn damp air always jogs the kidneys," Ramsay said when I came out. Beside a table covered in books and newspapers, there were 3 hard chairs. I sat on one and looked at a line of moose heads mounted along the back wall. Ramsay stood watching the pot. "Not able to reach those tubes these days, but I like to feed them. I'm very fond of their noise since Blue bought it." "Blue?" "My Alsatian." Steam began to rise from the pot. "Liver cancer. Sharp and swift in his case. Mercy. Not rotting away here like me. 84 last January." I nodded at the walking stick against the table. "You still work?" "Have to." Ramsay burst into a bout of coughing, then filled 2 fishermen's enamel mugs with water and tea bags. "I have no milk. There's cream." "Cream? In tea? That's how the Queen takes it." "Black is fine." Ramsay carried the mugs over a pipe in his mouth. I took out a 50 and put it on the table as he sat across from me. "Messy business," Ramsay said, taking the pipe out again. No more bar calls for Ramsay. Pass the parcel every time. Blathering about rashers 1 minute and then, "They all have their own crippled way of walking." Ramsay lit the pipe. The tobacco smelt like an exotic wood. "Sorry about the delay. My takings are..." "Don't say quite another word. I quite understand. No one gets rich from them." There were shuffling noises in the ceiling. Ramsay saw me looking up as he put the pipe away. "Pine martens," he said. "Birds? They're like weasels. They live up there. They live in the roof. Peculiar creatures. What do they do up there? They come and go. Do you want to see them? There's a ladder in the bedroom. I'll leave it today. I nodded at the silicone. Were you doing some DIY? Came back here Wednesday. 2 old gentlemen at my window, one with a fishing rod, trying to unhook the keys. Ramsay waved at the notice board. My house is in town. I reached for the mug on the table. Even had the damn gall to hang their jackets on my gatepost as they went to work. Blue used to keep this nonsense at bay. Now I'm wide open. I blocked the gate, called the law. 3 hours later they arrived. The black tea was sour in my throat. There was chirping outside. The birds were at the tubes. I saw one trying to get its beak in further than the hole would allow. The cleverness of the bird, Ramsay said. The nest they build, the way they immigrate, the way they can fly, in perfect formation, and the tiny brains they were blessed with. Never thought of that. My field originally, neurology. Brain surgeon. Amazing thing, the brain, when you look at it in a bowl. Just tissue and blood vessels. Where the mind is, that's where all the disgusting foolery comes from. I never blamed the rest of it. Involuntary. Did they arrest the 2 old boyos? Young men. Teenagers, actually. You said they were old. No? Ramsay inspected his pipe. No, I didn't say that. Policemen simply told them to be on their way, not to do it again. They'll hardly come back here. Unlikely. I have a bolt-action Winchester under the bed if any of them do. Ramsay drew on the pipe. The little pot glowed red. Were you a hunter? Ramsay glanced back at the moose heads. Near the Alps. Winters in the late 70s. Cold, dry air. Blood on the snow. Beautiful. Puffs of air lifted around him. Double shoulder shots. Round enters the blade one side, drives on to the far end. The whole body flexes and cracks its own spine. An anatomical masterpiece. He gazed at the pipe now in his hand. Not a meat-eater strategy, but I was in it for the kill. He sipped the mug. Air bust them home. Some call taxidermy morbid, but to me, it's respect. Memory. I stood. More tea? No, I'd best be going. Sure you don't want to take a look upstairs? No thanks, not today. I closed the door and walked past the bird still nibbling on the grain. There was a small mound of stones beside one tree with a dog collar nailed to a little stick at the end. One of the stones was painted light blue. There was a tapping on the window. I turned around. Ramsay stood behind the glass, pipe in mouth, sealant gun back in his hand. He waved. I nodded, then looked beyond the trees to the 2 large gateposts by the lake. As I opened the jeep door, I could still hear the pine martens. I could imagine their little feet endlessly scuttling over and back Ramsay's ceiling. Thank you.
So we'll move on to the next person, who is Deirdre Grimes. Deirdre is a fine art graduate, and in 1997 she kept a journal of her first pregnancy as part of her degree exhibition, which she published on the internet, making it an early blog. This was reviewed and part published in Other Mindedness, The Emergence of Network Culture by M. Joyce. Other publications include Red Lights in Crannóg, Electric Acorn, The Creel, Haiku Harvest, The Burning Bush, American Tanka, The Heron's Nest. So would you welcome Deirdre Grimes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Crannóg for publishing me again, and I feel very humbled to be here among the writers and poets that are here tonight. This is called The Perfect Patient. I have become the perfect patient, spilling my tea at the breakfast table like any old moron, as they rush over with tissues, making the nurses feel useful. The perfect patient knows just how she feels right at this given moment, but doesn't know what day it is. The perfect patient potters around the ward, attends all yoga, meditation and rap programs diligently, and never looks to see a doctor. The perfect patient has stopped cutting her arms, mostly because the nurses have taken the blades. She doesn't know how she feels about this. The perfect patient no longer hides her tablets in the pat of butter she has given in to the dullness they bring. The perfect patient may go outside to the little square courtyard, roofed by a grey cloudy sky, with a light mist falling to dampen skin and mind. Thank you.
Is Mary Wilkinson, and Mary has been published previously in Poetry Ireland Review in Crannóg, in An Irish Woman's Diary in the Irish Times, in Books Ireland, West 47, the Dublin Quarterly International Literary Review, Telltale Souls in San Francisco, the Listowel Writers' Week Winners Anthologies, in Lyric FM's Quiet Quarter, and RTE's A Living Word anthologies. And she was shortlisted for Poems for Patience in 2013. And she has indeed patience because she's waited until the end. You're welcome, Mary Wilkinson.
Thank you, and congratulations on a wonderful, terrific edition, and thanks for including me. This is just the last part of my story called I Told You Everything. My glasses. Here we go. Friday nights, Mam and I always go to China Villa for curry and chips. We sit across from each other at one of the small tables and drink Coke while we wait for the food. We don't talk. Mam studies her phone and I look out the window at the dark, black, shiny street. But somehow I always end up watching our reflection in the big glass window. We could be strangers, just ordinary people in China Villa waiting for our curry and chips. Although I could watch Mam's reflection all night long, her head bent over her phone and her thick black hair wrapped around her neck like a small animal taking a bit of a sleep for itself. Check. Neri comes in with his dad for a takeaway. Neri waves over at me and smiles. His dad says nothing. After they leave, Mam says, "Why don't you get to know that young man? He seems like a nice lad." Check. When we get home, I go outside to sit on the wall and look back at the house. The night changes everything, takes the edge off. With a few lights on, an illusion? Maybe. I see Mam pour a shot out for herself and drink it quickly. Then she pours another one and turns to go down to the room to watch telly. I imagine Dad then outside the kitchen window in his rolled up pants and sleeves, freckles scattered like huge raisins along his arms as he unravels the hose until it becomes a big yellow snake that stretches the length of the garden. Then Dad slowly turns on the tap. He's telling me we need to do it properly. I remember the water coming out in shy gurgles and sputters until it flowed in a clear, even stream. I remember thinking something special was going to happen. Check. And then I'm touching it. The something special was right there in my hands. The yellow of forgiveness, the blue of hope, the red, the orange, all arched in the spray. And Dad reminded me how he said that he'd catch us a rainbow someday, how anything's possible. Check. I hear Mam calling me. Dot, where are you, Dot? I decide not to answer her straight away. My voice stays stuck down inside of me. I'm going back over the day, how this very morning I told you I knew everything that would happen to me today. And I did. I told you everything. Well, almost everything. There is something else, but it might be best not to mention that. Some things can wait. There will always be another opportunity. Check. Like reflections that never stop coming, or echoes like the ones running around in my head. Echoes that might just get too loud. Then what? Mam's closing the Venetian blind now. The slats throw shadows across her body to make her look as if she's in a prison cell. I whisper, Mam. Wait, Mam, wait. What's on the telly, Mam? I'm coming, Mam. Tell me something, Mam. Anything at all, Mam. Do you remember, Mam? Wait, Mam. Wait. Check.
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you for waiting till the end. That's the last of our readers, and it just remains for me to say thank you to